Okay, folks, we will get started. All right, we have some folks joining us from California, from Oklahoma. Thank you for saying hi in the chat.
Wow, Sri Lanka.
New York. Yeah.
Sri Lanka.
Ooh, great. Oh, and Laurel, Maryland. Yep. Fabulous. Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. Just letting you know, too, this is being recorded. And you will be receiving both the recording of this webinar as well as additional resources and materials. So all of that will be coming to you. Great. We have Emery from Florida. She's an SDR for Lego Education. Great. Welcome. We're happy you're here. We have Winter Park representing from Florida. We have Manassas, Virginia, loving it. Tennessee. Thank you all for joining us. Okay, we'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started.
Wow, homeschool too. This is great. Elementary, high school, we got everybody. This
That's
is fantastic.
awesome. I wonder if we have any college teachers or professors here. That might be kind of interesting as well.
Would be, yeah. Portugal?
Wow.
Yeah.
In Boston,
Georgia.
that's great. That's where our U.S. base
Part
is.
of my territory, yep.
Mm-hmm. There's a question in the chat. What is SDR?
Right. Yeah, that's just one of our internal folks who helps out with, kind of identifying who some of our users are or people who are interested in Lego education. So yes, so we do have a number of folks, a number of our colleagues who are joining us today, and so we welcome them all. We love having our friends here, but we also enjoy making new friends too.
There you go.
Okay, so it is 5 after. Hopefully people are settled in, they're comfortable, they're excited to meet our guests and to learn more about the case for computer science and how to equip both students and teachers with future-ready skills. So I'm your host, I'm Emily Hayes. I am the educator success person here with Lego Education, and I'm thrilled to welcome you all to our webinar this afternoon. And joining me today are our panelists, Dr. Jennifer Kay and Dr. Colleen Cannon-Rufo. And so I will give them a few minutes to introduce themselves.
Hey, I am Jennifer Kay. I'm a professor of computer science at Rowan University. I have undergraduate degrees in math and computer science, and then went on to get my master's and PhD in computer science. And I do an awful lot of work in computer science education, most specifically educational robotics.
Fantastic.
And
my name is Colleen. We're excited to have you. My name is Colleen Cannon-Rufo, and I am a solution architect with Lego Education. I have 29 years in the public schools, starting as a teacher at the high school, elementary, and junior high teaching Spanish. And then I moved into my role as a technology integration specialist. I did that for 12 years and then finished in the last 5 years as a project manager. And most of my projects were related to technology, educational technology. So I have my master's and my doctorate in instructional technology. And I studied the efficacy of using educational robotics in the elementary classroom as part of my dissertation. So we're really excited to have this conversation today.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the slide deck here just so that we can see your smiling faces. And I would love to hear a little bit more about your knowledge and experience and your interest in educational robotics, because that's something that you both have in common.
Absolutely. Colleen, you want me to go first? You want to go first?
I think you should start.
Okay. So I did my PhD at Carnegie Mellon, which is an institution that has a really big robotics presence, and I worked on really big robots. So I did my thesis work on an autonomous Humvee, and it had to be a Humvee ambulance because they had to have room to put all the computers in the back and have people hang out, whatever. And I came to Rowan over 20 years ago now. And when I came to Rowan, they didn't have any Humvees hanging around for some reason, right? Robot Humvees. And Rowan has an amazing computer science department, and we also have a really well-known College of Education. It's fantastic. And I started sort of meeting my colleagues in the College of Education, and I was really interested in improving the way we were teaching computer science. And also, robotics has always just been super exciting to me. And so I thought, ooh, maybe we can combine these things. And so I started trying to teach classes, incorporating robotics into my classes. And over time, I started working with high school teachers and doing professional development training and other stuff like that. But yeah, so it all started with Humvees that could drive themselves.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So, Colleen, please tell us a little bit about your interest in educational robotics.
So mine actually started with Lego education, which is probably why I'm now a solution architect with Lego, right? Basically, I started as a technology integration specialist 2 decades ago. And one of the first things I had to do was support Lego Mindstorms in the classroom. And I remember being terrified. Like, you want me to teach robotics? Are you crazy? I was still trying to figure out how to hook up the, LCD projectors and get those to work. So that first experience was kind of exciting, right? In a scary kind of way. But the best part about it was when the students came into the classroom and they saw me with all of the Lego Mindstorms materials. And one little girl just said, Lego Mindstorms is back. I felt like a genius last year after this class. And I went, okay, if she felt like a genius, there must be something to this. And I think that's what I continued to see over the years as I was using all the different iterations of Mindstorms in the classroom, was how excited kids got in their learning, how intensely they started getting engaged in what they were learning, and how they'd start cheering when they'd solve a problem or a challenge, and not just for themselves, but for each other. And I remember thinking, whoa, we don't get that very often with our worksheets and our textbooks, right? So seeing how robotics really kind of brought that programming to life really resonated with me. And as I started researching it a little bit more and learn about Papert and, Seymour Papert, our father of constructionism, and the fact that he called those educational robots objects to think with, right? And you can absolutely see that when you're watching students use educational robotics in the classroom. And the fact that they can be learning not just robotics, right? But they're learning those secondary order uses of robotics to be able to learn about, math or ELA or science or even their social emotional skills while they're using those robots. I think is just one of the things that gets me really excited.
Yeah, and I'd love to bring that also back to computer science. Like, how does educational robotics kind of dovetail with understanding those broader computer science concepts?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I everything that Colleen said and more, right? I mean, I used to call robots my Trojan horse in the classroom, right? Because, you know, I would bring a robot into a classroom, and this is a classroom of undergraduates who are, not computer science majors, or high school events that I was doing or whatever. And you instantly get attention, right? They're like, ooh, I want to make this thing do something, right? And I'm like, cool, let's work with this robot. Now, I'm sorry, you're going to have to learn to code. We got to do a little bit of coding for this, but they're so motivated because they're like, oh, I don't care. Let me, right? And suddenly it's not, oh my gosh, I can't code. It's, oh, all right. You show them and they're like, huh. And then all of a sudden you're teaching them some of the fundamental things about computer science. How does a computer work? How are you're giving it a sequence of instructions, right? All those great things that teachers have been teaching forever about sequencing and giving, careful directions and whatnot. It's all in computer science too, and programming or coding. We kind of use both nowadays. You know, if you can see what you're doing and you can see when your program doesn't work because the robot's supposed to go forwards, but it goes backwards, that's the best, right? It's just, and as Colleen said, students want to help each other fix, what's going wrong here, what's going on here. There was one high school teacher, no, excuse me, middle school teacher who taught every single, I think it was eighth grader in his school, He was doing, he's a technology teacher. And one year they told him, okay, you're going to be teaching robotics next year. And he was like, ugh. And so so he was in one of my professional development classes that I was doing. And I talked to him later about it, and he said it was astonishing because he'd been teaching technology for years, and every whatever it is 6-week block he would get the next group of 8th graders. And when he started teaching robotics, the sort of all those discipline issues that he used to have almost disappeared. I mean, I don't want to give you a like robotics are your panacea and they're going to make everything great, but this guy was just, he was sort of evangelizing about how it had changed his technology course.
Yeah,
that would happen for me, Jennifer, as well. Like anytime I go into a classroom to work with a new teacher, they'd always warn me, oh, so and so is going to be a problem and a handful. And if we have to, we're going to take so and so out of the classroom and blah, blah, blah. I never knew who so and so was because they were just as engaged as everyone else in the classroom. And it really reminded me of how important engagement is, right, for behaviors, because if engagement is high, the behaviors are going to be appropriate, right? So, but you're right. It's that idea of the fact that those robots bring that computer science to life. They bring that code to life, and you can really see what's happening, right? And interact with it in a hands-on way. I think that's exactly why, we love the educational robotics as a component there of computer science.
Totally.
Definitely. I love that because you hook them first with that high interest engagement piece, but then you're able to like drill into that cognitive engagement and get them solving problems and getting them understanding.
Yep, thinking.
That's really cool. So let's actually delve a little bit more deeply into computer science, kind of as as a field of study and why it's so important, not only for our students but for our teachers. But so let's talk about that in terms of the future readiness. Why do we need computer science courses?
Well, I mean, so there's we need computer scientists, right? So the one argument is there's so much of a need to hire, people who are computer science, so many jobs that are unfilled right now that they're hiring for. On the other hand, there's also we want all of our students to be able to understand something about computer science, right? We don't want it to be this giant, scary black box, right? Even if you're not going to be a computer scientist, I don't want you to shut down when somebody says to you, oh, the computer can't do that, right? You want to be able to sort of, say, oh, can you tell me why, right? Just ask some questions. And also, one of the things that we talk a lot about these days is computational thinking, right? Which is sort of the process of how do we break problems down in a way that a computer can understand them, right? And again, those computational thinking skills are super important for if you're working with somebody else who's the computer scientist who's actually building the program for you or the app for you. But it's also super important just in thinking about how do I get my own problems solved, right? It's another way of thinking that's just sort of, okay, how can I break this big problem into smaller problems? And what are the pieces what's the data I need to get for this? What's the information I need to get? What am I looking to have as my output, as it were, right? What am I trying to produce? How can I connect pieces together? So yeah, I mean, I think everybody should have some computer science.
Right.
You and me both. And we're building on the shoulders of giants, right? Because I go back to Seymour Papert, and that was his vision, was way back in 1980. He was talking about how all students should be programming computers, and he was actually working with MIT in the artificial intelligence lab there to build a programming language for children, Logo, right? And that Logo programming language was the basis for the educational robots that he was building as well. So yeah, everybody needs to learn how to program, and that idea has been around for a while now. We finally have the tools and the devices to be able to make that happen. When you think back 40 years ago when he was saying it, we didn't even have computer labs in every school, right? Much less a device in every child's hand. So that's huge. I think you hit the nail on the head, Jennifer, when you said, that idea that it's about preparing our students. Future readiness is about preparing our students to succeed in the world beyond education, right? So we have to prepare them to be ready for that world beyond our classrooms. And what we're hearing from the workforce is we need this information. We need this, right? And I think you have a slide there from code.org, Emily, that you
Yes.
can share that talks about, the number of jobs that are out there in computer science and how few graduates we have in the field of computer science, right?
Yeah.
We're finally getting people to go into STEM. We're finally getting them to look at the STEM careers, but we need them to actually look at computer science within STEM, right? And recognize that they can do that. Look at that number, right?
Yeah.
420,000 open jobs out there, and yet only 90,000 graduates. And if we don't produce more and more graduates, we're not going to be able to meet the needs of our global economy, right? So I think that's one thing. But I think Jenny also said it when she talked about that problem solving, right? Even if our students don't become computer scientists, because we know not everybody's going to, computer science is an awesome way to lay the foundation for those other skills that our kids need, right? We don't know what kind of a world they're going to go into. We don't know what types of things they're going to have to be able to do in the world they go into in 10, 15, 20 years from now, right? So we have to prepare them for a world that doesn't even exist yet. Problem solving, critical thinking, all of those skills, those soft skills are so important to be successful in that world. And computer science just does that so beautifully, right? When we give them these challenges and we ask them to create a code that, break down the challenge, decompose it, like you said, and figure out what it is you have to do, and then use your algorithmic thinking in order to put step by step that solution together. You know what I mean? That's problem solving at its best. It's computational thinking. And I think that's where, computer science is going to benefit all children, not just the ones that go on and fit these jobs,
Yeah. Yeah. And I also, I mean, can I just add the idea of bringing computer science into elementary school, right? Into middle school, having, right, 50% of high schools already have a computer science class, 50% of high schools don't, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about those kids, again, I really want people to be computer scientists, right? I love my computer science students, but also, there's lots of other, my daughter's not a computer science. My son is a bit of a geek, but there you go. But so but what I wanted to say was that I at least, it's really important that the kids go to university having an idea of what computer science is, right? So everybody knows, I want to be a biology major. In high school, they know what biology is. They know, right? But I want them to know, have a taste of computer science, see if they're, if that's one of the things they're interested in, or maybe they're interested in, psychology, all these different things that we already offer in high school. Let's make sure that we get some computer science in there too, just so they know what they're looking at.
Well, and let's be honest, right? When they get to high school, they already know what they're going to be taking. They've already kind of laid their pathway that they're
Very
going to
true.
be. So it's great that we're offering computer science classes in 50% of our schools, right, of the states, right?
At high school.
Think about at the high school level, right? But at that point, they've already decided we've got to make sure that we're offering it in elementary and middle school. So like you said, they have that exposure to be able to even go into those courses that are being offered.
Yeah, totally. You're right.
I want to pull
100% agree.
I want to pull in a related question that popped up in our chat. And one of our participants is asking, how does computer science fit into the overall STEM spectrum? Because I love that you were bringing up this idea that we need to be introducing these concepts early and often. And so let's think about how, even though we might not have computer science specific courses in more than 50% of our high schools, we do have a lot of STEM offerings. So let's talk about how computer science can be supported in that.
Colleen, you want to take it first? You want me to take it?
Sure, I can take it. I think it's part of the larger ecosystem, right? So we know that computer science fits within that STEM world, right? Technology and engineering specifically. When you're applying those technology skills or applying those engineering skills in a STEM class, you're absolutely going to be using programming in some way, right? In fact, I know when we were talking with a high school district about where we would put the Python courses, would we put it in the engineering pathway or would we put it in the, computer science pathway? We decided it belonged in both because the kids need to have that skill in both of them, right? But if you think about it from that elementary middle school perspective, right? It belongs everywhere. That's where I see you can use computer science to teach math. You can use computer science to teach science, right? And if we stop thinking of computer science at those levels as an add-on, as something you go to a classroom for, to go to the specialist for, and instead we start embedding it into that curriculum, across the curriculum, you're going to see that computer science fits everywhere in STEM, right? And really helps, I think, students visualize some of these concepts that they're studying.
Yeah, and I mean, I would 100% agree. I would also say, let's talk STEAM, right? In the same way that like writing is essential. You can't say, oh, you have to go to your writing class once a week, right? And do this. You can teach, there's all sorts of material out there. How do I teach computer science? Sorry, how do I teach music, right? Using computers, right? How do I teach art, right? How do I teach storyboarding, right? So maybe I want to teach I'm working on a creative writing module in one of my classes, and I want my students to storyboard, and maybe I integrate, how can we use, say, a computer program like Scratch that a lot of people are familiar with, right? And before the students are doing their writing, get the students to be storyboarding, sort of a live storyboarding using Scratch, right? Again, you're teaching them it totally can be anywhere.
Yeah. And I just because you mentioned Scratch, there was another comment slash question in the chat about where does Scratch programming as computer science with Lego robotics kits fit in?
Totally fits. I mean, I don't know how to put it. So
Right.
Yes. So Lego robots, the Spike Prime robot uses the Scratch, uses Lego extra sort of Lego, Scratch blocks integrated with regular Scratch to program the robots. So if you're familiar with Scratch and you know how you can make that little cat, right, fly across the screen and do this, and it's just little blocks that you're lining up, right? How do I do this? You can do the same thing programming a robot. And I really think that it's some people sort of look down their noses at Scratch and say, oh, I don't know. I want that real coding, because real coding is like when you're at the movies and there's like these hundreds of lines of things flying up the screen, right? But real coding is thinking about, what am I going to do? What am I going to do next? How do I do some, if this is happening, then that, if that. And Scratch is such an amazing introduction into that. I mean, it's another way to grab students' attention. Yeah, it's fantastic.
I think you're right. That idea of block-based coding lays that foundation for, the concepts behind computer science, so that they're learning about events, they're learning about conditionals, they're learning about loops, and all of those different concepts that we need them to know, so that when they do and are ready to move to text-based coding, they're there. But just to remind you too, that Spike does have text-based coding within it, right? So that's another thing that I love, is that you can move to text-based coding based on Python in the same app that you use the block-based codes based on Scratch. It's also something else I loved about, watching the iterations of Mindstorms along the years. When we first started, we were not using Scratch, right? We were not using that block-based coding. In fact, Lego Education was building its own programming, blocks. And what they recognized was how ubiquitous the Scratch programming language had become, and moved to, moving that EV3 over into classrooms so that it would be based on Scratch, and now Spike Prime is based on it. So I think that's been really responsive of Lego Education to recognize that that's where it was, and that really lets students transfer. It doesn't matter what programming language or what programming app they're using, they're going to be able to transfer those skills from our resources to other resources. And I think that's huge. Transfer is where that deep learning comes from, right?
Yeah. And I will say, even before Lego moved to Scratch, I offered introduction to programming using robots classes, again, a elementary course for students who are not CS majors at the undergraduate level. So it was a 1 semester course at the undergraduate level, equivalent to a full year course in high school. And the first half of the semester, we were programming in a block-based coding language, and then we transitioned into Python. And it's so easy once the students have, oh, I see, this is how I do it in blocks. I understand the concepts, right?
Yeah.
And so now I'm, the block-based coding gives you such structure, right? It I don't know if I can say it literally is, but figuratively is this wonderful scaffolding for that now they understand this, and so they're learning the next step, and we transitioned from block based to real quote unquote coding, in a semester. So yeah.
And it opens up the accessibility of computer science to all the students, especially beginning, if you can, with that icon-based coding. So our students who are emerging literates, in their English language development skills or in their literacy skills. And I think having computer science be accessible to all of our students opens up then equity, right? They're now able to access, some of these opportunities and these kinds of jobs that you were talking about before. Yeah.
I would also point out that it allows us to differentiate, right? And there are students who are ready for text-based coding long before they get into a classroom that's ready for them. And I think about, I was taught Python by a third grader who said to me, "Why aren't you teaching us Python yet?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know it." And he said, "Well, hold on." And he pulled out the Raspberry Pis that I'd purchased, and he, pulled open and he started showing me how to reprogram the games, using Python. And I'm thinking, this is a third grader teaching me Python, text-based coding. There's nobody in this school, much less this district, who's ready for him. And why not? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do we have to change in order to be able? And that's just a child who was exposed to Python. Think of how many kids in that same classroom were never exposed to it, who probably could have done just what he did if they'd ever been given that opportunity. So,
and
that idea, Emily, of we've got to give them access so that they can go forth and do what they want to do and what they're ready for.
And Colleen, something about, one of the things that says to me, is how strong a teacher you were, that you were willing to let this, right? Because a lot of teachers are just like, oh my gosh, my students are going to know everything, and I'm right. And it's kind of a little bit analogous to, I met somebody who was an elementary school teacher a while ago at a party or something. And I said, oh, I could never be an elementary school teacher because I can't spell. I totally can't spell. And she said, let's just go over and look that word up in the dictionary. And I was like, such a genius, right? And when you're talking about programming, one of the, again, we've been talking about it's what do I do? What do I do in this step? What am I doing, right? It's all about that. And even if you are, a teacher who maybe doesn't know Python, right? You can ask a student, okay, I don't know Python, but can you just talk me through what you're doing? And, half the time I get students now who say, oh, Dr. K, do you know Ada? And I'm like, no, but what's your problem? Right. And I say, tell me, no, seriously, honest to gosh. And I say, why don't you show me, tell me what you're doing? And half the time they look at me and they're like, oh, never mind. I got it.
Yeah.
Right. And
they just need someone to help them think through the
that's
problem.
right. And slow down and think through it a little bit. Yeah. But that's fantastic.
Well, I think you're right. Part of it is there's a fear, right, on teachers' part. Like, how am I going to teach computer science? At the high school, we tend to have teachers who have a background in computer science. That doesn't happen always in junior high, and definitely not in the elementary classroom. So how do we convince our teachers that that's okay? You know what I mean? You're not supposed to be the sage on the stage here. You're supposed to be the guide on the side.
Yeah.
And your job is to facilitate the students to learn this. And if we are nothing else, we are experts in how to learn, right? And that's what we do best as teachers. Let's figure out how we can help this child learn what they need to know.
Yeah. And I think that's, I do think that, the fear, it is a scary thing, right? When you're teaching something new. And I do think that just sort of there's so much going on with CS Education Week, an hour of code, and all the different tools out there, and I think just a little tiny bit of just try it Most of the time you can't break it, right?
Yeah.
And just, teachers who are a little bit less confident about their ability with computer science, right? Sometimes doing some professional development, professional learning, right?
Mhm.
So that you're just try it yourself, right?
Yep.
Because especially with robots again, right? We're back to, I walk into the classroom full of teachers with a robot, and some of them are like, yeah, I'm never going to be able to do that. Right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the robot is dancing around the room and they've got their phone out and they're like, right. So it is scary. It's scary to try something new, and it's very scary, to teach something when you think maybe the students know more than you. Right.
You
But
know,
I think that there's, what are the goals that you're trying to teach? And
right.
Colleen, you can probably talk more to this than I can, but what's the focus? What are your goals, and how can you help the students go beyond that? Those students who are prepared to go beyond that, right?
I think you also bring up a good point, right? That we have, first of all, we need to provide professional development, right? Any
Absolutely.
teacher can build their knowledge when they have professional development. And we know the research tells us that, the students are going to be more successful when we provide that PD for our teachers. So,
Yeah.
we do a great job at Lego Education providing that type of PD. And we know that implementations are more successful when they have that opportunity, right? Um, and I think about one of my former teachers was a third grade elementary teacher, and she moved into the middle school program doing one of our applied technology courses. And she just took Teacher of the Year, National Teacher of the Year award. And that's only 4 years later. She had never programmed before when she was a third grade teacher, right? So it's like you said, that being open to saying, hey, this might be a different type of experience for me. I want to give it a shot. And then we made sure to get the training that she needed in order to be able to do what she had to do.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that training was a week in the summer. You know what I mean? It was not like she was taking full semester long courses in order to learn that. She was learning alongside her students. And I think that's part of what we have to be open to, right? That idea that it's okay. I just worked with an educational service center in Ohio, and they are building a teaching computer science component that they're going to be offering based on our Lego solutions, right? As part of a grant that Ohio is offering, Teach CS, right? So I think even
Oh,
the states are getting on board and recognizing they need to provide their teachers with this background so that they can feel comfortable and feel supported in the classroom, right? But educational technology providers have to also provide resources with scaffolding, right? And I think you see that. Code.org does a beautiful job with that, right? That idea that we're going to provide the teachers with all of the information they need to share so they don't have to know it all, right? That they're
yeah.
going to be able to be successful without even having all of those.
Yeah.
Provide the right resources.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sorry, Emily, but I was just going to say, look, elementary teachers don't have to be calculus experts, right? And right. And we're not asking elementary teachers to be, prepared to take CS1 at the university level, right? We're asking them to be prepared to teach some of these concepts that they're already teaching, just in a slightly different way. Yeah.
In an innovative way, in an exciting way, hands-on for students, right?
Yeah, totally.
So thank you, ladies, because one of my questions that I was really hoping that we would delve into was what is one of the greatest challenges in helping to support teachers' understanding of computer science. And you really did a phenomenal job of saying, hey, it's okay not to know everything and to learn alongside of the students. And then also to have that district support or that site admin support to have professional learning for those teachers so that they feel a little more confident going in addition to those things, what else can either a school administrator or a district administrator do to support the teaching or the understanding of computer science? So either something specifically for the teachers or about creating a culture and an environment where this has greater importance.
I'm trying to I I really think some of it is helping the teachers to figuring out what is the block for the teachers, right? You have some teachers everywhere, right? Like Colleen, who are like, oh, this is cool. Okay, let me see what my students doing, right? Awesome, right? And then you have people, and I'll admit that for some things, I'm a complete fraidy cat. I don't want to, I don't want to try this. What if I do this wrong? What if I, right? And you need to build up that sense of self-efficacy, right? You need to support um, the teachers with sort of either um, having teachers in groups working on this, right? So you can have teachers in a district if you have multiple elementary schools, right? You can have sort of different schools, facilitate, make it possible for those teachers to have some time in the first year to be meeting with each other, and also to have some mentors outside who, when they get stuck, they can ask for questions. Colleen, I don't know if you want to follow up. I'm not sure.
No, I think you're right. That idea that, I mean, one of the things our teacher said to us when we started putting robotics into the science curriculum was, we had purchased a class set for the grade level. And they said, we don't teach in isolation. We usually teach the same things together. And it would be easier for us if we had two class sets, right? So it was that idea that we needed to provide them access to the resources in a way that made them more comfortable. And, there were still four teachers at the grade level, but two could work together and then the next two could work together. So I think providing that type of support is key, right? Listening to what they need to feel more successful to do the things they're going to do. And then lead by example, right? There's no reason why you can't pull these experiences into your professional development. If I can teach math and ELA and science with computer science, I guarantee you I could teach whatever you need me to teach in your PD using that as well. And I have brought robotics into PD experiences. And it's exciting to see the teachers go, whoa, and get excited about being in that professional development experience. So lead by example as well. But then again, it goes to don't assume that they can do it without any type of professional learning. Make sure that you provide the professional learning to the greatest extent possible and get creative about that. It doesn't always have to be a release day. It could be, online coaching sessions. It could be, something in the summer, but getting creative about how you would embed that professional development into there, I think, is key.
Yeah.
And I love that you keep reinforcing the idea that computer science, when thought of more as a skill rather than the content that's being taught, then it becomes much more like malleable and flexible, and you can fit it into the school day without trying to make it a special owned separate piece.
Emily, I love to tell the story of the students that, when we were trying to get the robot to go a specific distance, right? And I had asked them to use rotations as their parameter for the robot moving. And I had the little girl who came up to fifth grade, high performing school district, right? High performing math test skills. And I said to her, I'm like, well, she said, I can't get it to go. I'm like, why? And she said, well, if I program it to go 3 rotations, it goes too far. If I program it to go 2 rotations, it's not far enough. I said, well, what else could we try? And she goes, well, there's no numbers between 2 and 3. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, we know we taught fractions, right? That was part of what they learned, and they tested well on fractions. But now we were giving her the chance to apply that skill, right? By programming the robot to go in fractions, to use fractions. And then she goes, oh, that's right, fractions. And, the kid behind her actually prompted her to say it. And then she went to type it into the little calculator, and she goes, oh, I can't put 1/2 in the calculator. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we did decimal equivalence, right? So we know we taught these math skills, but we need to give them the opportunity to apply those math skills too, right? In authentic ways. And what better way than to program the robot to do what it needed to do? And I think that's where I look at it and go, you know what? To me, it's not about teaching kids robotics. It's about teaching kids math. It's about teaching kids ELA. It's about problem solving. It's about critical thinking. We're just using programming and computer science as a means in which to do it, and robots that make it all look and come to life, right? So I think that's where we really hone in on that. Computer science can be everywhere in STEM if we open our minds to that. And isn't that how we started with educational technology? When we first started with technology, we went to the computer labs to learn how to use them. Can you imagine going to computer labs now as being the only way of using technology in a classroom? It should be the same way with computer science.
Yeah. Yep.
That's smart. That's a great note. So I do want to shift the conversation just a little bit and think about, how some districts that you've either interacted with or supported, how they've planned for computer science instruction, and what happens in a really successful implementation.
Colleen, I think you work with districts much more closely than I do. I mean, I can tell you about individual local experiences, but you probably have a more general picture.
I think the biggest thing that I notice is they all approach it differently, right? And they approach it in the way that works for them. There's no one size fits all here. In some districts, they have the ability to put an entire course in and run an entire course. I just did that with a middle school in Illinois where they're putting computer science courses in sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, right? And that's awesome. And they're building those courses out. And then you have a lot of elementary school districts who are putting computer science into their STEM classes because they have STEM classes. But not all districts have a STEM class, right? So some of them are looking at the science curriculum and where could they put computer science into the science curriculum. And I think the most important part of it, and actually WIN is another one, right? The what I need classes. And a lot of people are putting them in WIN classes. So it's that idea of and it's important to look at what structure exists already within your school day. And let's figure out where it goes. And it's awesome if you can get, add on STEM teachers at every elementary school because that's the way you want to go. But if you can't, that's okay too, because you have all these amazing teachers in the classroom and we could embed it within science, or we can embed it within, some different math units right throughout, or we'll find that space. But the important part is not to say it's not possible. It's thinking outside of the box. It's looking at what structure do we have, and in our world, where does it fit, right? And we can help you figure out where it fits. It's just a matter of being open to the possibilities so that we can get that in. And then the other part is making it appealing, right? Making it look like something that you want to do and that kids, not just the students, can get engaged in, but the teachers too, right? And I think that's part of it, right? That we put the right resources in front of them so that everybody feels engaged.
Yeah, I mean, I really think, Colleen, you said earlier on, and everybody knows that engagement is key, right? If you have a class full of students who are interested and excited about what they're learning, they're going to push through. They're going to they're going to do what they have to do to make the robot do this, or to make, whatever tool it is, to make the music sound, to speed the music up to double speed so it sounds funny, right? By messing with the frequency of the sound or something, right? And I remember ages ago I was teaching a computer science class where there was a picture in the textbook about how to teach conditionals, these if else's, right? If do this thing, else do that thing. And one of the examples they were using was green screen pictures, right? So you have a picture of somebody in front of a green screen, and then you have another picture, and if you see green, you replace it with the other picture. So suddenly you're replacing with the picture of the shark, or you're replacing it with the picture of, the soccer goal, right? And the kid is hitting a soccer goal, right? And I was trying to do this in class using the canned pictures that they were giving us with this particular textbook that I had, right? They had a bunch of green screen pictures and a bunch of, whatever pictures. And one of my students said, do you have a green screen? Could we do this with our own pictures? And I didn't have a green screen at the time, but it turns out it's really cheap to buy one online. It's just a big, giant green sheet, essentially. And I brought that into class, and all of a sudden, these students were like taking all these pictures of themselves and then really wanted to be like, the winner of that soccer game, right? And stick themselves inside. And all of a sudden, they wanted to figure out how to solve this problem, right? And so we've been talking a lot about robots. I love robots, but there's other things besides robots, other ways to bring computer science into your classroom, and it's a matter of figuring out what it is that you're interested in and how can you get the students excited about that.
Yeah. And just start somewhere. I love that code.org did what they did, right? When they built that hour of code, and that hour of code became a week of code, and now it's the month of computer science. And it's really, I think, gathering steam, right? That idea that we need this in our life, we need this in our classrooms, and I think it's wonderful to see so many people starting to embrace that concept.
That's fabulous. So what other lessons can we learn from other implementations? Maybe ones that didn't quite go well, or things might have been done a little bit differently.
I think planning with intention is important, right? It's recognizing that computer science is on its way to being a mandatory curriculum, right? It is in some states, it isn't in others, but it will be. And in those states where it's already something that needs to be taught, right, they're starting to audit based on it, right? I just was talking with a school district who just went through their audit, and they do a lot of different programming things, but in the audit they said it's not articulated enough, right? So it's that idea of it's coming. So start thinking about where it's going to fit and get ahead of that so that you're not reactive, you're proactive. I think that would be huge. And that's kind of a lesson that I was taking away from it. And I think some of the states are really starting to jump on board and really kind of lay the foundation. And I think we're going to see more of that over the next few years as well. And that's going to help, it's definitely going to help our school districts be more successful. But turn and look and see what other states are doing, because it's eye-opening when you look and see, okay, this state, they're already coming up with grants on how to teach computer science to their teachers. And this state, not so far away, doesn't even have it on their radar, right? And wow, talk about a difference in educational experience between those two states and the children in those two states, right?
And this is a good time. I'm going to pull up another slide. Oh, I'm sorry, Jenny.
No, it's fine. I was just going to say that CSTA, the Computer Science Teachers Association, has a set of K-12 standards. And if your state doesn't have their own standards yet, there's an awfully good chance that when those standards come in, they're going to look a heck of a lot like those CSTA standards. Yes, because a lot of states, right, are totally, and there's so much material on the CSTA website, the Computer Science Teachers Association website. You can join for free, and there's so much material there, and you can start to see, because remember, with these audits, just using a computer in your technology class, that's not computer science, right? And it's really important to take a look at what are these standards? What is it? What are the concepts that we're trying to teach? And some of those you're going to look at and you're going to say, boy, I understand that. I see where we already get that, or how we can just change this a little bit and turn it into teaching this. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to share this slide, and some of the points that you ladies just made are reflected in some of the research that's on this slide. Oh, and it always doesn't give me the slide that I want. Okay, here we go. And so I would love for you to maybe pick one of these boxes that you would like to, expand upon a bit. So hopefully you can see that.
So yeah, now I can see it. I made it.
Okay,
I made
perfect.
It big. Give me a second.
I love number 5. Computer science isn't a subject. It's a skill, right? It's a skill that's needed by almost every student. It doesn't matter if they're going to be a computer scientist. Give them this opportunity to learn how to problem solve, to learn how to think algorithmically, to look at a problem, figure out how to break it down, and how to represent some abstract, that idea of abstraction, where they can really represent something that they don't, complex idea with a model or a simulation, right? All of those things, those computational thinking skills are so key. And if we stop thinking about computer science as this add-on thing over here, but this incredible resource that we can use to teach across the curriculum, I think would be golden, absolutely golden.
Yeah, I love that. The other one that it's just jumping out at me, number 5 is fantastic, is number 7, which is talking about universal access and equity, right?
Yes.
And there are a lot of students who just don't have access to these materials right now, and it's getting better. But how is a student at a school where, there's no computer science, nothing called really computer science, right? It's called technology. How is that student going to know that this might be something that's interesting to them? And how are they going to stay on top of, it says, how can it enable those with less access to catch up? Right? And mitigate inequalities. It's really true. That third grader of Colleen's, was learning Python, right? And
No, he was
it's
teaching Python.
I'm sorry, he was teaching Python.
I was
Excuse me.
learning, and I'm still learning, by the
Exactly.
way.
Exactly. Well, me too. There's some interesting stuff in Python that one of my 2 students
Oh,
just showed me. But yeah, so trying to, I've done workshops with high school students where, I just remember this one girl who was just like sort of sitting like, I don't do this stuff. Right. And by the end, she was like, wait, I did it. Look what I did. Look what I built. Look what I programmed. Right. And she's so excited. Right. And
mm-hmm.
if she hadn't been at that workshop, who knows how long it would have been before she would have been exposed to like, yeah, actually you can do this and you're pretty good at it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the earlier we can give them those sorts of opportunities, right? The better.
Indeed. Well, we are just about out of time, and I want to thank you, ladies, sincerely for this conversation. It's been really enlightening, and I've enjoyed it very much. There have been some questions in chat. So some things I've tried to include them in the conversation. And I know some folks have more specific questions like, hey, where can I get information around grants and funding and that kind of thing? And so, those folks are welcome to reach out directly to me at success@lego.com. And I just put that into chat. So you're welcome for like kind of those very specific questions to reach out to me. Or I would also invite you to join our Educator Success Program. And this will bring you all of the great free resources that we have to help with instruction, to help with an implementation, to help with getting activated or getting started, or connecting you with somebody like Colleen to help you figure out what your district plan might be for computer science integration. So, but we do have a couple more minutes. I will scroll through the chat here to see if there's a couple more questions that we can answer. And ladies, you're welcome to do the same if you would, please. I do love that there was
informal learning in the community center, and I think that's an amazing place to bring these resources, right? And talk about, especially you're working with low income children and families, right? Give them all access, right? And if you create I think of the swimming classes I used to take with my kids at the Y, right? Why not have a coding class with mom and dad, right? Or so that you can be with your parent and you're learning together. And who knows, that parent may be able to move into a different income structure because of it. So I think anytime you can get kids to come in, I did a workshop with parents and students, and it was awesome to see how many moms and dads got involved in that experience, programming the robot to do a silly walk, and that would be a phenomenal use of time for those after school informal learning programs. And there's funding for those. Keep that in mind too, right? There's is it Title 4 Part B, I think is the out of school, can be used for out of school informal programs, as well as Title 1 Part A has some funding, depending on, for mandatory parent engagement problems. So that's something to think about. I think I saw one as well. Where was it? professional development resources do I suggest? Well, of course, I work for LEGO Education, so I'm going to suggest LEGO Education professional development. But it's all out there, and part of what I know I do is I'm always looking for. I went back and got my degree. Right, I took classes at Carnegie Mellon's Robotics Academy. They do a phenomenal job as well, and that's kind of where I started my journey down on, started with educational robotics. So you'd be surprised how many resources are out there related to learning in professional development around computer science. Start with your area, universities, area, things. ISTE has some phenomenal courses that they offer. I think that, starting to look and see what's out there, but that might be something that we can look at too, in terms of different types of professional development resources that are out there.
Yeah. And, because Jenny had mentioned CSTA, I did want to point out that we have created a new alignment guide of a number of our lessons to specific CSTA concepts. So if you are still a teacher who's looking for things to do in CS Education Week, then we have some of the lessons already aligned there for you. So you're welcome to jump into that resource as well. And Jenny, it looks like you wanted to say something too.
Yeah, I wanted to sort of jump off of that and say, when you're looking at resources and you're trying to figure out, is this actually going to be helpful for my school? How do I decide if this is somebody else trying to sell me something, or if is it really going to teach computer science? An awful lot of the people who are putting out educational robots, educational other tools for teaching computer science will give you alignments with CSTA standards. And I don't know how to emphasize how CSTA standards really seem to be the sort of
The gold
center
standard
of the world, right?
Yeah.
At least the US world in terms of, and it was, there's a great, all sorts of experts and teachers all work together and teacher experts, right? To come up with these standards and explain them. And I think that, if I were trying to make sure that I was doing something that was going to help my students, I would be looking at these standards and saying, has somebody already given me an alignment with this? Fantastic, right? Then I can just jump at it. Or do I see how, do I understand, right? Or do you, as an administrator, probably understand these standards better than I do, right? This is your bread and butter all the time, right? You're looking at these things and how do I get this and this and this and this, right? In the required standards, are there things that I can pull from this and pull from this and make it work together? So, yeah.
I did see a question about generative AI as well. And I know that's something, everybody is talking about right now, and where does it fit? And I can tell you, stay tuned. You know what I mean? I'm sure you'll hear something from because you asked, what is LEGO doing, right? We're talking about it. We're definitely talking about it. So, just keep staying tuned for that in the future.
Yes. And with that, because we're at time, I want to again thank you, our panelists, Dr. Kay and Dr. Cannon Rufo, for joining us today, and everyone who joined us for the webinar. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. I saw a lot of head nods. I saw some folks taking notes, and so that's always great to see and hear. And again, you're welcome to reach out to us with any questions, and we are happy to get back to you. And you will all, again, be receiving a recording, the resources that we shared, and then an additional resource that we just created with Dr. K around, kind of some of those ideas around the importance of computer science. So thanks again for joining us, and we appreciate your time.
Definitely. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate it.
Fun.
Thanks to all the listeners.
Indeed. Jen, that was fun.
Oh, it was.
We should do this more often.
It really was. Yeah. No, it's so good because it really is. It's good stuff. It's what we want, what we want our own kids to get, and what we want people to understand, Look, you really can do this. It's not as it seems enormous, but it's, just like everything else. It's
It's accessible.
All right. Well, with that, thank you again, everyone, and we appreciate your time with us today.